next speaker is Rob. He's the chair of the NSSN, but he's one of our speakers. Rob Williams.
Thanks, Linda. Thanks, comrades. And as Linda has done, I just repeat the welcome to the conference, an organisation that has now been going since 2006, when it was launched by the RMT, as Linda said. And as she said, we normally have 2 meetings a year that you can guarantee, but this is not our first meeting of the year, because it's our 4th meeting. We've already organised 3 solidarity public meetings this year, in Birmingham for the bin and home care workers, in Swindon for the Honda workers, and just a couple of weeks ago in Bridgend for the Ford workers. And of course, we have visited countless picket lines, because there increasingly is countless picket lines. You can read about them in our weekly bulletin, and I'm sure you heard about them today. They're often localised, yes, many ending in victories, including the Birmingham strikes, shamefully against the Labour Council passing on Tory cuts. The incredible Glasgow equal pay strike of 8,000 mainly female council workers, but supported by unofficial action of mainly male bin workers, and won the incredible £500 million off the council. There is no doubt that the undemocratic Tory anti-union laws are having effect on national action, although we do have to say here, because we did launch a campaign against the Trade Union Act, that too many of the unions and the TUC barely lifted a finger in reality against the Trade Union Act. PCS couldn't take national action against a decade-long pay freeze, even though there was an 80% vote for action, because only 47% of members voted in the ballot. This by a Tory government that couldn't win a majority, relies on the DUP, and can't get its Brexit deal through Parliament through countless votes. And of course, we've just gone through a European election where only 37% of people voted in the Euro elections, and I couldn't see many of those being barred from office because they didn't reach the 50% threshold. Now, of course, we don't share the pessimism of those in the union movement who think the national strike action is now permanently ruled out. And of course, I'm sure Dave is going to talk about the fantastic ballot result they had that defied the anti-union laws. And of course, in UCU as well, that have had national action on pensions as well. But the rise in strikes are showing that workers will find a way, whatever the obstacles. The issue is, of course, as ever, is leadership. Whether it's the bosses or this weak and divided Tory government, whoever wins the Tory leadership election, then neither are going to act in the interests of workers. We have Boris Johnson, the wannabe Tory Trump. We have Jeremy Hunt, the would-be wrecker of the NHS. Neither will their Brexit deal, whether it's remain or leave, the Tories will be guided by big business interest. And when people talk about a people's vote, the best people's vote we could have in this country is a general election to get rid of the Tories. Now, the NSSN isn't a political party, but I make no apologies for saying that in a fight between the Tories and their Blairite agents against Jeremy Corbyn and the pro-worker, pro-nationalisation manifesto he stood in 2017, then we shouldn't be neutral in a battle like that. But we in the Labour and trade union movement has to mobilise for an election, and that is easier the better programme that it is fought on. And I believe that Jeremy doesn't have to wait till a general election to show that he can make a difference to workers and overcome any suspicion that is fanned and created by the right-wing media. If he boldly declared now that if he was Prime Minister, which could happen in months, that he would nationalise Honda in Swindon, Ford in Bridgend, the steelworks in Scunthorpe, where 4,000 workers are facing statutory redundancy because the company is insolvent, then that would make a massive effect. We particularly call on the Labour-run Welsh Assembly government to promise if necessary, to take Bridgend Ford into public ownership, just as they did with Cardiff Airport 6 years ago. Just as we did 3 years ago, issue the call that Port Talbot Steelworks should be taken by them into public ownership, and we popularised the idea of nationalisation to save jobs and save plants, if necessary, to save communities. The day after our Bridgend meeting, Plaid Cymru were forced to raise the issue of nationalisation in the Welsh Assembly government. We really do say what needs to be said, and that is what needs to be said right now. Just as we did in 2011, where we fought, amongst many others, for the idea of a public sector general strike against Tory attacks on workers' pensions. And of course, we saw the fantastic 2 million workers on strike then. We should remember, only 7.5 years ago, 2 million workers went on strike in this country to defend their pensions. That type of programme, that type of action would give workers confidence to fight, if necessary, occupy their plants to make sure that we keep those plants running. 10 years ago, the NSSN conference took place after another eventful few months of struggle, which we played a key role. Keith Gibson is here, who played a leading role in the Lindsay Oil Refinery strike at that time, where you had a national, unofficial action against the race to the bottom at that time. I also spoke alongside Keith at this conference to celebrate my reinstatement after being sacked and threatened with arrest by police, after being sacked with being done for trespassing on the site for not leaving the plant. I, at the time, was a Unite convener at the Linamar car components factory in Swansea, an ex-Ford factory. My sacking was a direct result of our support for our former Vistian comrades in Belfast, Basildon and Enfield, who occupied their plants when the company went into administration. A few months after that NSSN conference, investors in the Isle of Wight, they announced the closure of their wind turbine factory. So much for big business being concerned about climate change. And what happened? Some of those workers occupied that plant. Now I'm mentioning these for a number of reasons. Firstly, it showed our wave of struggle can open up with workers when faced with an attack. They can gain confidence from other battles. But on the issue of Vestas, I went to Vestas, like some others in this room, predominantly young workforce. I asked the question, would they have occupied their plant if the Vistian workers hadn't occupied their plant a few months earlier and popularised that idea? In 1971, a Tory government was forced to nationalise Rolls-Royce when our company was facing ruin. A few months later, workers in the Upper Clydeside shipyards in Glasgow had a working occupation of their plant. 80,000 workers marched then, and the Tory government again was forced to intervene. In the mid-1980s, Liverpool City Council stood up against the Iron Lady Thatcher and refused to pass on Tory cuts. I make these points because just as strike action by Deliveroo and McDonald's workers, I'm sure Ronnie's going to talk about, are creating before our very eyes new unionism. We can set an example that other workers can follow. Look at the co-founder of Uber, who has just purchased in Beverly Hills a mansion of £72.5 million, where Uber workers can barely afford a roof over their heads at this particular moment. Comrades, when workers are organised in their millions, they are still the most powerful force in society. It's not our first meeting of the year. It won't be our last. As Linda said, we encourage you to organise your own meetings, but also come to our TUC rally in Brighton on September the 8th. That rally will take place just 12 days before the climate change strikes that have been called on September the 20th. Now, we, of course, know it's not enough to just click your fingers and a general strike will be organised. If we'd done that, we'd have clicked our fingers over the last 10 years of Tory austerity. But I think we should be encouraged. The young people who perhaps don't even know what a trade union is, or at least using the vocabulary of the trade union movement. And we should treat that as, we should work out how we can relate to that action as well. I would appeal to those young people, if you're in a job, join a trade union, become part of our movement. I'll finish this point. It is vital that the union movement orientates to this movement as well with our own demands, especially how it's only through public ownership that it would be possible to real tool industry to produce socially necessary and environmentally friendly products and services, but also at the same time guarantee workers' jobs into the future through socialist planning. And that is the only way you will win workers over in those industries as well. In my opinion, TUC Congress should send a statement of intent by passing a motion at the TUC that it will call on all unions and workers to take part in the action on September the 20th. We would love it to be a general strike against austerity and climate change as well. But even if it's a lunchtime protest, even if it's any action that can draw those workers and young people together, but not to stop there, to fight for a general election, to get rid of this Tory government of big business polluters, but also of austerity and the anti-union laws. Come to our TUC rally to fight for this programme, and let this conference be a council of war, where we discuss about the different disputes, learn from each other, where we develop the fighting programme to unite workers, to mobilise workers, to take this Tory government down.